5 words. I'm not aware of these. When KashPatel said this, his voice was clear. He was determined. He didn't hesitate at all. 5 words. Clear, concise, unambiguous. And 3 minutes later, when the document from Eric Swalwell's red folder landed on the table, those 5 words took on a completely different meaning. Because the document was an official FBI memorandum signed by his aide in the middle of the process Patel said he was unaware of, 3 minutes. It lasted that long. And in those 3 minutes, the claims that the Epstein files were reclassified were recorded for the first time in such a concrete manner, in front of the cameras. If you want to be the first to learn about such developments, subscribe now. This hearing was actually supposed to be held behind closed doors. However, at 9:47 a.m., Eric Swalwell requested a change in procedure. He requested that the session be turned into an open session and that the cameras be allowed in. Committee Chairman Mark Warner initially objected. Privacy concerns, national security protocols, standard procedures. But Swalwell said he has documents that deserve to be shared with the public. Warner finally took the session public. By 2 p.m., all the major news networks had set up their cameras. No one knew exactly what would happen, but those who knew Swalwell's background understood that it wouldn't be an ordinary session. Eric Swalwell, elected from California's 14th District, is a former federal prosecutor. He has been serving on the Intelligence Committee since 2015, one of the names in Washington known for not bluffing. When he calls for an open session, he usually has something he wants to show. This morning was no different. The first 40 minutes of the hearing went by as usual. Republican senators questioned counterterrorism successes, cybersecurity updates, and budget priorities. Democratic senators, on the other hand, posed sharper questions: agent appointments, corporate priorities, transparency commitments. Patel was prepared for every question, fluent, controlled. For 3 hours, he didn't waver for a single moment. Then, at 3:14 p.m., Committee Chairman Warner gave the floor to Swalwell. The room changed. "Director Patel," Swalwell said, his voice calm, almost friendly, "I want to talk about the Epstein files." Patel's face didn't change, but his left hand rested lightly on the edge of the table. "Of course, Senator. As I stated in my previous remarks, the FBI—" "I don't care about your previous statements," Swalwell said. He opened the red folder, separated by tabs, prepared in a methodological manner. "Things that concern us, things you didn't tell us. Things that concern us, things you didn't tell us." "Director," Swalwell said, his voice taking on a different tone, "it is alleged that during your directorship, some of the Epstein files previously open to Congress were reclassified. What would you like to say about these allegations?" Patel replied, "I am not aware of such allegations. The FBI's classification review processes are conducted routinely in accordance with established protocols." Swalwell nodded. "You are not aware of these," he slowly reiterated. He took out a document from the folder. FBI letterhead. The confidentiality markings were clearly visible. This is an internal FBI memorandum dated March 15, 2025, 3 months after your directorship began. It contains instructions for the Classification Review Board. He removed the document. According to this directive, an expedited review is ordered for all documents related to Epstein that reference current or former government officials and associated individuals. He paused. This memorandum has been signed by your assistant director. This memorandum has been signed by your assistant director. The courtroom fell silent. Patel's lawyers leaned forward. Whispers, note exchanges. But Swalwell waited. "Director Patel, are you not aware of this memorandum signed by your deputy?" Patel replied carefully. "The classification review processes involve multiple units. It may not be possible for me to be personally aware of every individual memorandum." "I understand," Swalwell said. "But this memorandum, allegedly, covers 23 documents that were previously made available to Congress. These documents had already been reviewed and approved for sharing under the Freedom of Information Act." He leaned over the table. "Is it possible to carry out such a comprehensive process without the director's knowledge? Is it possible to carry out such a comprehensive process without the director's knowledge? Follow where these questions are going. Don't forget to subscribe." Patel went on the defensive. Classification decisions are made in accordance with national security assessments and established legal frameworks. Such decisions are always based on legitimate grounds. Legitimate reasons, Swalwell said. Okay, then I want to ask this. He produced the second document. This is a record showing the classification history of the 23 documents in question. Each one was reviewed and deemed suitable for sharing before your directorship. She removed the document. Under what conditions can the reclassification of documents deemed suitable for sharing be justified by legitimate national security reasons? Patel answered, the emergence of new information, changing operational conditions, or comprehensive security assessments can lead to such a review. Swalwell opened the third document. Director, I want to ask you this. There are commitments to transparency regarding the Epstein files, and these are on the record. She reviewed the document. During your first term as director, you used a very clear language of transparency regarding the Epstein files. Can you explain how this commitment aligns with the reclassification process in question? Patel replied, our commitment to transparency does not override national security requirements and legal restrictions. We must balance both principles. Dinjay, Dedi Swalwell. Doesn't the fact that these documents were previously deemed shareable mean that that balance has already been established? Silence. Swalwell moved on to his last question. He stood up. Senators generally do not stand up during hearings, but Swalwell was standing. Director Patel, I want to ask you a direct question. Patel waited. This reclassification process restricts the public's right to access information. Documents that were previously deemed shareable are now inaccessible. And it is on record that this process coincided with the start of your directorship. He leaned over the table. Given this context, how should the question of whether the reclassification in question might have other motivations independent of national security be answered? Patel answered. All classification decisions by the FBI are based solely on legitimate national security assessments. I categorically reject the claim that it is intended to protect any individual or political factor. Swalwell shook his head. You categorically deny it, he said. But this memorandum is on record. The classification history of these 23 documents is on record, and it is recorded that this process began simultaneously with your directorship. He stopped. These three facts, along with your categorical denial, are now part of the congressional record. These three facts, along with your categorical denial, are now part of the congressional record. External reactions began before the hearing ended. A former federal prosecutor from legal circles gave a brief assessment. Swalwell's approach was technically extremely strong. The document was real, taken from an official process, and the fundamental contradiction was clear. Why are documents that were previously deemed suitable for sharing reclassified later? This question could not be answered with the provided responses. An academic working in the field of information freedom said, reclassification may be legitimate under exceptional circumstances, but these conditions need to be justified. This morning, that justification was not clearly presented. This morning, that justification was not clearly presented. At the heart of this hearing, beyond the technical details, lay a much more fundamental question. How is the balance struck between the public's right to access documents and the authority of institutions to classify them? This question is not abstract, because the reclassification of documents that were previously deemed suitable for sharing provides a concrete example of how that balance works. And this example was recorded this morning in front of the cameras. As Patel left the courtroom, he departed not with the corporate confidence he carried when he entered in the morning, but with unanswered questions. The memorandum was on the record. The classification history of 23 documents was recorded, and it was on record that that process occurred simultaneously with the start of the directorship. Swalwell put these three facts on the table, and the answers to those three truths were not enough to close the questions. Sometimes corporate accountability doesn't come with major revelations. Sometimes just an official document and 5 words that directly contradict that document are enough. I'm not aware of these. And the signature on that memorandum. 3 minutes. It lasted this long. But the questions recorded in those 3 minutes will continue to be on the agenda for much longer. Because unanswered questions remain open.
And this morning, a large number of questions remained unanswered. We are following all these developments. Subscribe to our channel, don't miss the next video.